Okay, well, welcome everyone to Amherst Neighbors program today. We're having a program on hospice, and this month both of our programs were fairly closely related. The first Thursday of the month we had a program on writing your own obituary, which was very well attended, and I learned quite a bit about it. And today we're looking at other end of life options, and we think that hospice is a really a great topic for us to learn about. Today we have two people from Hospice of the Fisher Home, which is in North Amherst. We have Maria Rivera. Wave your hand, Maria. Is the executive director, and Kemper Carlson is the director of outreach, and so she will be outreaching to us today. And they did a, a program about 2.5 years ago when we had about 150 members. Now we have close to 700 members in our organization, so we've grown quite a bit. And there's still a lot to learn about hospice. I myself have been a volunteer at the Hospice of the Fisher Home for 10 years. Uh, and so hence I had a special interest in inviting our presenters today because I've been to the Hospice of the Fisher Home. I volunteered there last Tuesday. I will continue to volunteer there. And it is just an incredible place that provides an incredible service, not only to the patients who are there, but to their families. And we will be learning today, not just about Hospice of the Fisher Home, but how Hospice of the Fisher Home is kind of a unique version of hospice. And with that, I will turn it over to Kemper and Maria. And Kemper, you can remove your mute and we'll do your share screen and we will get going. And thanks everybody for coming.
Hi, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to be with you today. I actually didn't know all the things that Larry just told us about Amherst Neighbors, and that's amazing. It's a wonderful community, and we're very lucky to be here. So Kemper has a little bit of a slideshow that she's going to put on for everyone, but before she does, I thought I would just give a little bit of history about how hospice came to be and how the Hospice of the Fisher Home came to be. So up until about the 1950s, it was pretty common for people to be treated all the way up until their dying breath. And in fact, it was kind of seen as a failure for a doctor if the patient passed away. So they never wanted to admit that was going to happen. And then in the late 1960s, or no, 1950s, a woman named Dame Cicely Saunders was the first person to sort of link symptom management to compassionate care. And so she insisted that dying people deserve to be treated with compassion and respect. And so she started St. Christopher's in London in the late 1960s. So around the same time, the Dean of Nursing at Yale University, Florence Wald, went over to do a sabbatical and to learn about what Dame Cicely Saunders was doing. So kind of around that same time, late 1960s, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross wrote a book on death and dying. That was actually the name of the book, On Death and Dying. And she basically the two main points that she was making is that death shouldn't be institutionalized and that people should have a choice in their plan of how their care goes. So now fast forward a little bit, 1974, Florence Wald comes back after learning with Dame Cicely Saunders at her hospice, and her and two chaplains and I think two pediatricians and a chaplain started the first hospice in the United States. And then in around the year 2000, a local woman named Barbara Snook was kind of inspired by the idea of having a hospice residence in Amherst area. And so she went and she found a woman named Joan Chakian, who had started a hospice a few years earlier, and they ended up hatching a plan to have the Fisher home be in existence. So that's sort of a little bit of history of how we got here. Kemper?
Sure.
Kemper, before you start,
Yep.
I forgot to let people know that if you have questions, please wait till the end of the talk, and then we will have a question and answer period. And you can just use the icon to raise your hand and we will answer your questions. Okay, thank you. Okay, Kemper.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. And start the slideshow. So you heard a little bit about how Fisher Home came to be. And I got here as a caregiver for an elder in my community. And then I became a volunteer, and then I was inspired so much that I decided I wanted to be a hospice nurse. So I went back to school, and I'm a nurse here now. So it feels really good. And I'm the director of outreach. So I'm now doing this kind of work, reaching out to all the good people in our community like you all. So thank you for inviting us. Oop. Sorry, having technical difficulties here. There we go. Oh, I don't know what's happening. I'm sorry. There's a delay. Okay, so hospice is a gift in a number of different ways, but the hospice philosophy is that we're here to serve you, and it's a service to like the whole family and caregivers. It's not just about the individual who's on hospice. And we come to you where you are and help provide the highest quality of life for you for as long as possible. Things that are good take-home messages that I like to tell people about is, the first one is that home hospice is free. So Medicare, Medicaid, and most private insurances have a hospice benefit that pays for 100% of the services. There's no copay. So you get to have all those services come to you wherever you are. You don't need to have a physician refer you to hospice. You can refer yourself, or you can refer a family member, and the nurse at the other side will ask you all the questions and figure out about eligibility, and then we'll reach out to the physician or the hospital and get the records for you. So don't need to have anybody else do it. You can refer yourself. People choose hospice when the treatments are not either available or desired, and that life expectancy is 6 months or less. Of course, people can stay on hospice for longer than that. And the data shows that when people choose hospice support, they live longer and better than without the extra care. So it's very much a team approach, and we really care about the individual goals. We don't have a boilerplate of what we think it's supposed to look like. It includes family members, individuals who are on hospice, whatever the background culture is, and all the caregivers who may or may not be just family members. And you become part of our family. So this is a little bit about the hospice team. It's, as I said, it's a team approach. It's sort of a European model where everybody talks with each other. We have a meeting every week where we review every single person and family that we're caring for. So we've got nurses and CNAs, a medical director, social work, spiritual and bereavement. Of course, our wonderful volunteers. It covers the supplies and medical equipment and any comfort meds. Sometimes included in the hospice team is what's known as a death doula or end-of-life navigator. And of course, we recognize that there's a larger community care circle that is often supporting whoever the core caregivers are. And that, of course, includes people like Amherst Neighbors. When do you know it's time for hospice? There's lots of different little pieces around that. Part of that is that you're tired of whatever the treatments are. You're not, handling them well. It doesn't have to be just cancer. There could be dementias, cardiac diseases, strokes, autoimmune diseases. There's a number of different diagnoses, disease conditions that could lead you towards hospice. And your hospice nurse will help you figure out if you're eligible or not. So here's some of the things that we know that is out there in the community that, so we'd like to do a little myth busting. The idea that hospice is about giving up. It's really just about turning the camera in a different direction and saying, how do I really want to maintain my comfort and my dignity for as long as possible? And that's one of our core goals. Hospice is only for people with cancer. As I said, there's many different diagnoses. Hospice is only for 6 months, but it can be longer. There's recertification periods that everything gets reviewed, and people can be on hospice for a few years. You can't keep your doctor? Well, yes, you can. You don't, especially, we really like to see the primary care physician stay connected to the people we're caring for, because they've got a lot of history there that can help inform appropriate, support. Hospice hastens death. Well, the data actually shows that for people who are choosing the hospice care, it can extend their life. Part of that has to do with really good symptom management. You can't go back. Well, you can. You can revoke hospice to go do other treatments. You can come back on. It's just happens with one signature. It can happen. You have to give up all your other medical care and medicines. Well, it depends. Sometimes people are wanting to just stay on certain kinds of medications, even if they're not offering a lot, because it's their routine, or they just have a rhythm about their life they want to keep. And we just encourage people to do what works best for them. Yes, while you're on hospice, if you wanted to get specific treatments for your disease that's causing your decline, you just sign off and then you can sign back on when you're ready. So one of the things that we're really good at is the symptom management, and that's the pain, shortness of breath, nausea, those kinds of things. We're really quite good at it, and we're familiar with the disease processes. And so we know what to keep an eye out for. We're like, oh, that's what's happening. Let's make sure that we have this medication on hand for when that shows up. And as I said, we have weekly meetings for the care team. And I think we're going to keep our questions to the end. Maria, do you want to jump in with anything that I've been saying?
I just want to say that hospice is a collaborative care model that really works. And there are a whole team of people who, like Kemper said, meet every week. And we don't just talk about, your medical care, what medicines you're on, or what. We're really talking about, if your son Tom is coming from New Mexico next week, and how you're feeling about that, and how the family dynamics are going. And that's why there's a social worker involved. And it's a care model that keeps the patient and the family in a really safe net of people to help them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for saying that.
Yeah.
So sometimes there's some confusion about what's the difference between hospice and palliative care. In a broad stroke, you can get palliative care while you're still pursuing curative treatments. And both hospice and palliative are really good at symptom management. People are able to tolerate their treatments a lot better when they have palliative care on board. And the Fisher Home, while we do have the 9-bed residence here, we also have an at-home community program covering much of Franklin, Hampshire, and Hampden counties. And again, hospice at home is free. That also includes anywhere somebody is living, you know, Applewood, long-term care, assisted living, skilled nursing facilities. We go to the Veterans Home in Holyoke. And if you do come to our 9-bed hospice, we do have room and board fee here. That is private pay, though some long-term care insurance will cover part of that. We offer the home care, that's what it's called. And we also offer respite care for when the caregivers are just really needing a break. And then we help, and then all hospices offer this. For every certification period, the loved one can go here or can go to a skilled nursing facility for 5 days, and we pay for that and give the caregivers a break. Or maybe they're going to a trip or they've got a wedding to go to. We, you know, as a nonprofit that's not affiliated with any other organization or hospital, we have sort of a more laser focus, and the nonprofits tend to give higher quality of care. There's a number of research papers out there about that. We are also the only 5-star rated hospice in Western Mass. We tend to offer more nursing hours, more CNA hours, and the full 13 months of bereavement support. So we love your support also. If you haven't been to the hospice shop, please come on down. Donations are welcome. We've got this beautiful volunteer program. We do fundraisers, and we have opportunities for donations and planned giving. And again, these are just the take homes. Home hospice is free. You can refer yourself, you know, choosing hospice when you're not wanting to do some of the other interventions, and that people tend to do better when they're on hospice care.
And I just wanted to say that being non-affiliated and being a nonprofit, but especially not being attached to a hospital system, really helps us to exact change quickly, which is the reason why we're so good at what we do, is because we can get together and say what works, what doesn't work, and immediately change that without having to go to corporate or go through steps. We can make immediate adjustments to make sure that we're still giving the very best care. So that's a really nice thing.
All right, we're open for questions.
Okay, so you can take down your share screen. And I would like to kind of kick off the questions. I know when my mother passed away, she had hospice care in a hospital. And I'm just wondering about thinking about hospice in a hospital as opposed to either in your home or in the Fisher home. Can you talk more about that?
Do you want to grab that?
Sure. So you can get hospice in the hospital. Typically, it's when someone's very close to the end of their life and maybe they're not very stable for transport, or they just really don't want to leave the hospital. Typically, they have to have unmanaged symptoms that they're coping with at the hospital so that they'll qualify for general inpatient level of hospice care. But typically, I think your case is a little unusual because typically, you know, I don't know of many people who have hospice in the hospital. It's typically in someone's home or, you know, where they live.
Mm-hmm. Okay. There was a question on the chat about the volunteers, and there was a general question about how would one volunteer to be a volunteer to Hospice the Fisher Home, what kind of training, and if someone was trained, what are the kinds of things that they would do?
Sure. Our volunteer coordinator here is Tara, and she runs trainings, the larger trainings, a couple of times a year. There is also a shorter training that's available more frequently if people want to just start, you know, kind of right away. And so the things that they're able to do on the short training is they're really not interfacing with any of the hospice patients, but they're a support role. They might be doing maintenance or cooking some meals or those kinds of things. The longer training, is it, how many weeks is it? Six weeks, I think.
6 like 4-hour trainings, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it, there's 6 different sessions or something like that.
Yeah.
Tara's got more information than me on that one, but with the full training, then there is interfacing with the hospice patients and going into their room or going to their home, sitting with them, talking with them, reading a book, playing cards, playing music. People tend to bring whatever their gifts are with them and offer that. We have some people who bring service dogs, Reiki. So a lot of it is tapping into, whatever gift the volunteer has.
And there are
And would some,
volunteers. Oh, sorry.
so would someone just call the Fisher Home or go online? How would one become a volunteer?
Yep, it's on our website, and you can also give us a call.
Okay, good.
And just a reminder that our volunteers are also volunteers in our community as well. So sometimes the patients that are living in their own homes or in skilled nursing facilities, they really benefit from a volunteer. In fact, one of our home volunteers went to visit someone at a nursing home. She had been visiting her every once in a while, and she went there. She just happened to think of her and stop by, and it happened that the person passed away in that moment when she was with her at that surprise visit that she came to. The woman was alone in her room, and it was just really beautiful that she was there to bear witness and to hold space with her as she passed away.
Okay.
I have a question, and for others, if you want to ask a question, you can wave your hand. Some of you know about the little yellow hand icon. Either way is fine. You can put a question in the chat. And for those of you that we can't see, you need to open your video up so we know to call on you. We would love to see your beautiful faces. So couple of little quickies, like you referenced about a 5-star rating. Who does the rating? Is that Department of Public Health? Is that a special certification through a hospice organization? How does that work?
So our governing body is the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. So there are core measures that we have to report on when we get every single patient. So there are 7 measures that we have to report on when they're admitted, and then there's measures that we have to report on after they pass away. And so there's that, how we score on those measures, and then there's also how patients and families felt about our care that their loved one received.
There's a survey that goes out to them, a specific survey that goes to all hospices.
Okay.
So all hospices have to report on these measures, and then if you go on, I think it's
Care Compare.
Yeah, Care Compare website, you can choose hospice, and then you can compare any kind of. Actually, it's good to know that you can do this with any medical service that you want. You can go on to Care Compare and compare, pediatricians or physicians or
Home health
aides. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to hold my questions, but I see Carmen has a hand up. Carmen, you want to unmute? There you go.
Yes, I was just wondering, approximately, if they're inpatient, how much approximately is the fee for daily board and care?
Sure. Our residence here is really kind of a home setting. It's not considered inpatient, but yes, for in the house, it's $4.95 a day, which is private pay. It's about the same as most other types of skilled nursing in our region.
Is there any help with Medicaid or Medicare?
It is private pay, but some long-term long-term care insurances will pay for a portion of the room and board.
Okay. There's a pretty cat.
Martha's got a hand up, as does Ann. So we'll go Martha, then Ann. You're on mute though. You want to unmute?
Thank you. You said at the beginning that if you wanted to start some arrangements that you should call somebody. But I didn't get who you're supposed to call.
You can just call us, or whatever hospice you're choosing. You just call the hospice directly, and you can refer yourself or your loved one. You don't have to have a physician refer you.
The other question related to that is, I don't want to die after my time. However, to get a doctor to agree with what my time is, I guess that's the only issue for me, that, you know, I would like to be able to choose when I feel like my life is over. I would like to be able to choose, but still we have no option for that legally, I guess.
It keeps going through the legislature, and we'll see it here eventually, is what I understand. But in the meantime, there is one option that is available everywhere, which is voluntary stopping of eating and drinking. And that's usually a longer conversation, and a plan needs to be put in place, and making sure all the family members are on board, and it is an option, and we just keep the loved one comfortable as they decide to leave.
Because I didn't know if that was a legal option, because I have been researching that quite extensively. But so that's one of the things that I could just come and call you and discuss the options.
Absolutely. Yep. We've done it a number
Many,
of
many
times.
times.
Are those typically because somebody's got a diagnosis that they're trying to deal with, controlling their end of life? I mean, if somebody just said, I don't have a particular diagnosis, I'm just tired of living, is that going to apply?
Usually there's a reason why, that there's a decline, some sort of decline happening that is
Affecting
not
their quality of
comfortable, or
life.
it's affecting their quality of life, and they're not able to realize the level of comfort that they want.
Mm.
Ann Perkins?
Yes, thank you. So I expect to use your services at some point, because I do have a terminal diagnosis, but I'm doing very well at the moment. And I actually came to visit your facility and talk with, I'd forgotten her name, but another nurse. My question is, so I have one daughter and she lives locally, and she works in medicine, and she's a very private person. And I actually worry that you have too many people who are going to want to help me. I want to stay home, in my condo, and have you come here and take care of me when I get too sick to stay on the meds. But I don't know that I want a social worker, and I already have my own minister, religious person, and I just feel like I would be overwhelmed, and that my daughter would feel overwhelmed if too many support people came from Fisher House. Is that ridiculous?
No, it's
Not at
not. Actually, it's common. And when we first start talking about hospice and having that conversation, we learn those things about you and your daughter, right? And so we'd say, do you want this to happen? All those people don't have to come. They just are there in case you want them, but they definitely don't have, it can be overwhelming.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
perfect.
Yeah, we do. We work hard to make that balance work.
Thank you.
Marietta. Oh, you're on mute, Marietta. You're on mute. You need to unmute, please.
Unmute. I've been a volunteer at the hospice for too many years, and it's a fabulous place, but I was thinking about the business of getting too much help, too much attention. And I can remember vividly at least one person who posted a list of the people. She was actually in the residence, but she posted a list of the people that were allowed to come and see her. And nobody else could come and see her because she didn't want to be overwhelmed also by her own friends. She was fine. They should send her postcards. They could phone. She would select what she would answer, but there really was a very good filtering service for her that people really paid attention to.
Mhm.
That's it.
I had a follow-up question for Carmen. Again, I'll remind other people that if we can't see you, we don't know what your question might be. So if you've got a question, you got to turn your video on and then wave your hand or the like. Carmen had asked about referencing you clarified the rate per day. Maybe it would be helpful to take a step back and help us really understand the difference between being in-house versus in your own house. And most of us, I would think, would want to be in our own house. But what are the things that trigger that realization that maybe we need to go to your house as opposed to our own? What are the things that bring people in and make that end up changing?
Yeah, that's usually different for every single person. Some people's goal is to stay at home throughout the end of their life, and we'll work as hard as we possibly can to make that happen. But hospice doesn't provide 24-hour care in the home. So the nurses come in, up to every day they can come in, but there's not 24-hour care. So when people have good support and caregivers to help take care of them, or they can afford to pay to have private caregivers stay with them, then they usually can live out that goal of staying in their own home. The difference is that here at the hospice residence, there's 24-hour care of nurses and CNAs that help with all of the personal care and things that need to be done. So people have different goals sometimes. They're like, when I can't do this anymore, that's when I want to go to the residence. Like when I can't use the bathroom by myself anymore, then I want to come to the residence. Or when I can't get out of bed, then I want to come to the residence. And some people say, I never want to come to the residence, and they live their life happily until they pass away at their own homes. So actually 2/3 of our patients every year die in their own homes.
Yeah, and sometimes there's the caregivers are, the family members, they're worn out and they're having a hard time meeting the needs as somebody declines. And sometimes the individual on hospice says, I don't want my family members to take care of me. I want to go someplace and just have them be family as opposed to my caregiver. So there's so many reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you. Oh, it looks like Laura has a question. But you're muted, Laura. If you would unmute, there you go.
So I have a question. I'm a nurse at Cooley Dickinson, and when I see like an elderly spouse finally make the decision that they want to put their partner on hospice, and let's say in this picture he had severe dementia, he was up at night, sleeping during the day, that kind of thing. So my assumption is, if you can't afford the thousands of dollars it takes for private care and you have to opt for a nursing home, what is happening to Medicare coverage when you are on hospice? And let's say you're entitled to 21 days in a nursing home under Medicare. And so let's say the spouse very possibly could pass away in a month. Is it a financial stretch for that person, putting that person in the nursing home and having them on hospice? I mean, is there a conflict of Medicare payment there, or does Medicare only pay for hospice and then not the nursing home?
Yes. So, okay, I'll try to round on all the questions, but so the person's in the hospital and then they're going to, are you saying they'd be on a rehab benefit for 21 days, or what benefit were you referring to?
let's say, I thought Medicare granted a 21-day up to 21 days post-hospital in a long-term care facility. I could be wrong, but I thought that was part of basic Medicare. Am I wrong?
I'm not sure actually about skilled nursing facility coming. I know that hospice is an insurance benefit in and of itself. So all the
Right.
things that are covered under the conditions of participation for hospice are that insurance benefit. So you can be in a skilled nursing facility and be on hospice. Medicare would become primary to pay for the hospice benefit. And then I'm not sure if I'm fairly certain that you couldn't be on hospice and then have, like, let's say a rehab benefit or a long-term benefit from also Medicare. That'd be like the insurance double dipping. So I think
it wouldn't be rehab. It wouldn't be rehab, because rehab, you have to be able to learn, have 3 hours of PT. I mean, we're not talking that at all. We're just talking long-term care
yeah,
and in hospice.
As far as I know,
I've
we've
never seen
never
that happen.
seen it happen.
Mhm.
So there might be some circumstance, but
Okay. Yeah, I just wondered because, what happens is if you end up paying for long-term care out of pocket, if you're on Medicaid, you owe that money later out of your estate. And that comes as a surprise to a lot of people. So anyway, nothing's free.
No, and I'll say one more thing about insurance, and that is that so you definitely can be on the hospice benefit and then have Medicaid paying for your room and board fee for the skilled nursing facility.
yeah.
Oh, for the skilled nursing. Okay.
So if you have
Medicare-
Medicare and Medicaid, you can have both hospice and the room and board.
Right.
One from Medicare and one from Medicaid.
And so does Medicaid also pay for the board at Fisher Home?
It does not,
there-
no. And I'm working on that. Hopefully I'm working to change that. It's a long process, but I'm trying hard.
Yeah. And I'm kind of frankly worried, I know that there's a lot in the media now about the current administration, but, I'm greatly hoping they're not going to cut something like this out of their program.
Yeah, we are too, believe me.
Right. I hope that you make a lot of noise if they start to cut stuff like that.
There will be a lot of
Yeah.
people making a lot of noise.
I think all of you will be making noise with me. I think that's what I think.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So just to maybe piggyback a little bit, my understanding is that Medicare covers the first 20 days, 100%, and up to 100 days per calendar year with an 80-20 split with your Blue Cross Blue Shield or wraparound insurance. But I think that's for, being in a skilled nursing with active rehab.
Oh, really?
I'm not sure it covers just the long-term care part of the skilled nursing. That's a fair question to research, and probably we could find the answer. But my question really gets because Medicare, help me, when you're currently today covering people that live in skilled nursing and you're bringing your hospice services support to the skilled environment, the nursing home is still getting its payment. It's just that, like a PT might come in and get something, you're coming in and you're getting what you're eligible to get as a hospice service satellite coming in and leaving.
Correct.
Okay.
Right, we're contracted with that facility to bring our services in.
Right. And you earlier mentioned respite care. So if a caregiver is burning out and they're going to go take a break, that respite has to happen in a skilled setting. Is that what you were saying? Or can it happen in your setting? Or do you bring people to the house during that 5-day? How does the rest?
It depends. Certainly it depends on whether we have a bed or not. So we just make sure that we guarantee that, and we have contracts with other of these skilled nursing facilities to allow that respite. So it kind of depends on the status of things.
It also sometimes depends on where the person lives. If they like, this may be far for them, for their family to travel to see them or whatnot. So sometimes they want to be somewhere closer to where their family lives. So it really just depends.
Thank you.
Okay, I see a raised hand at Nancy Eddy.
Yeah, thank you. I'm a little confused by this discussion about what Medicare will and will not pay for. My husband had hospice care at home. I would have said for probably a couple months, and Medicare paid for it totally.
Mhm.
Is that right? I mean, I think that should just be very clear to people.
Yes, hospice care in your home is free to you. There's no fees. So any medication that you have that you're on that's related to your hospice diagnosis, any equipment that you might need, any supplies that you might need, all of those things are also supplied by hospice.
Yeah, it was, it's hard to say that it's fabulous given the situation, but the care was in fact fabulous and greatly alleviated the family. Yeah.
To hear.
Yeah, I mean, folks that have experienced hospice support, I hear nothing but real thumbs up. A lot of people are intimidated to kind of go that way, but when they do, they're almost always glad to have the support. It takes some burden off. It's not everything to everybody. Mary looks like has a hand up, but you're on mute. You have to unmute.
There we go.
There you go.
Sorry. So what's your sort of occupancy rate? How difficult is it to get a bed there? You turn away lots of people because you're full up.
Yes, it's sad that when we can't accommodate when somebody needs to be here when we're full, but then we always make sure that they understand that we're contracted with numerous skilled nursing facilities, as well as having, you know, the possibility of at-home care if they have the resources or can go home. We can meet them there. So there's lots of different ways to find service. And if there is somebody who you know, is out of our service area, you know, we work with the other hospices. We often do hospice transfers. We call them, we're like, hey, how's it going? Can you, you know, pick up this person? The family really needs you. And very often all the hospices are very, you know, prompt in responding.
Okay, that's really helpful. Just what's a rough idea about, you know, the number of people you can't, who want to come to Fisher Home to die and you can't take in a year or some other, you know, just trying to get a feel of, in a way, how realistic is it to think that you could die at the Fisher Home?
I think it's very realistic.
It's very realistic, yeah.
We budget for 7.5 patients in the house, you know, beds filled, and we actually never make that number. So
well, that's a really good metric to know. Great.
Yeah, yeah. So we really do have empty rooms almost all the time. It's just, it always seems like that when we're full, then suddenly everybody and their mother wants to come into the residence. But then when we have 4 empty rooms, it's crickets. It's really unbelievable. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. That's very helpful.
You're welcome.
Carmen, is your hand still raised?
I'm sorry,
Did you still have a question, Carmen?
I had another question, but you took my hand. I can't use my yellow hand.
Yeah, well, you can ask your question now.
Okay, when a person is living alone, how many people that you know can be in hospice and manage their life living alone?
Well, you'd be surprised. There are some people who say, I would love to just have the extra support come in and have a nurse check. I'm not declined so far that I'm needing extra care. I can manage things on my own. We certainly do have people who refer very early in their process, and we try and support them and help them think about, when is the time that you're going to need a little bit more care? What does that look like? So we try and,
helpful. Yeah.
Lots of discussion.
People have a tendency to wait to sign on to hospice until, you know, their loved one is actively dying, and it's really interesting. It's a support to the family and to the patients that they could have, I mean, for at least 6 months. So it's just, you know, interesting that people wait so long to get on to hospice program, because, you know, you can have just someone to reach out to 24 hours a day, no matter what.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really, even if something small comes up and it's like, I don't know, you know, I feel nauseous, or my, you know, my leg is suddenly swollen, or, you know, and
Yeah.
you're gonna pick up your phone and call, and someone's gonna answer that phone call, and a nurse is gonna talk to you. And
Yeah, or
come
make a
out if
visit,
they,
yeah.
and come out if you want them to.
The trend is though that people overall, statistically, people are starting to sign on a little earlier in their disease progression.
I think Ann had another question, and maybe Martha. I saw Martha's hand earlier, but I wasn't sure. And Laura, will come to you next. Ann, did you have a question? Oh, you're back on mute though. You got there you go.
Always challenging. Thank you. And I never did figure out how to do that yellow hand thing. Anyway, but I assume it's still true that you cannot go on hospice as long as you're taking medications that are designed to curb your disease.
That is not true.
Really?
In the cases of something like chemotherapy, I don't know, usually people stop chemotherapy, but let's say you have heart disease and congestive heart failure, and you're on some medications that help, you know, diurese you or help your heart pump better. You can stay on those meds because we consider that comfort care. If we take those medications away, you could potentially be progressing the disease along or creating more discomfort. So that's just an example that if the medication is helping you live your life better, then we say all for it.
But if it is a chemotherapy type and it's helping control your disease, that's a comfort.
Well, yeah, I guess if there's a gray line there. I think we've had people who did radiation for comfort.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like to shrink the tumor that's pressing on
Their
spine or whatever. So it's kind of a case by case basis.
I see.
But like surgeries and curative types of interventions are usually out if you're on hospice for that.
Well, it seems like it's changed a bit since my mother was on it in the 90s. Thank you.
You're welcome. People who are taking chemotherapy drugs, they tend not to go into hospice while they're taking those medications, because also they require like frequent blood work and like visits to their oncologist to titrate those medications. And so all of those things are sort of linked together as like a person who wants to still be treated.
Thank you.
Laura and Martha first and then Laura. Okay.
Let's see, I just forgot my question. Take Laura first. The memory is gone.
So I know sometimes the nurses' aides are sometimes the most sought after help. My dad always used to look forward to his bath, with the nurse's aide. And I think customarily in high need cases, you might get the aide more than once a week, but it probably depends on staffing and other needs and stuff in the community. I'm talking about the field hospice services, not the Fisher. So if people want more physical help than what hospice is able to provide, do you have a list of trusted caregivers that you can give them? Yeah,
absolutely.
We do. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And also, because of our structure, we have 2 CNAs that visit our community patients. So our community patients tend to get more CNA care than with other hospices.
It's not
Oh, that-
infrequent that there'll be 5 visits a week from one of our CNAs.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That really makes a huge difference. In the hospital, we have such an acute shortage of CNAs. I've thought about like getting a CNA license and being a CNA on to get like a relief from being a nurse. But thank you.
I love you for that.
Talk about not being able to think. Yeah, I just want to say, I think that makes such a huge difference.
It really does.
Yep.
CNAs are so overlooked. I mean, they're
Yep.
the most important person.
They're like the
person
core.
who
Yeah.
they're the person who's actually taking hands-on care of people and doing things that they have to be really trusted to do, things that that people really, really need. And the CNAs, I mean, I can say about both our home CNAs and our CNAs in the house, they're what makes the visitor home even greater.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And if
And
the
then,
nurse
so-
happens to be there and there's a need, the nurse will help.
Can I tell
Yeah.
a little story about my volunteer work?
Please.
During my volunteer work, one of the things that I did was I helped prepare dinner. And in the kitchen, there's a little call box. And if a patient, for any reason, needs any kind of support, they push a button in their room, and then the call box goes off in several different places. And I worked in the kitchen there for like 6 years. And as soon as the call buzzer went off with the room number, I ran as fast as I could appropriately to get to the room of that patient. And a CNA or a nurse 100% of the time beat me there. So I can tell you that when I was at the Fisher home, just the amount of service that was available at the spur of the moment based on need was just overwhelmingly positive. And I think it addresses a little bit of Laura's question, but the care is there just continuously. It's really impressive.
Thank you so much, Sandy.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think what makes our community program special is that we're the same. We all have this residence and have this knowledge of the level of care that we want to give. So we take that heart of that out with us into the community where we go. It's the standard of care that we just believe in so strongly that no matter where we are, we're giving that kind of care.
Martha remembered her question. Go
Yes.
for it.
Yes. I was just going to say this program is very, very useful. And I'm in a way surprised that not more people are here. And on the other hand, I'm not surprised because death is not everybody's favorite topic. But how could this be made available? I would love to show this. I don't know if it's going to be recorded. Yeah, well, you are recorded, but I would love to show this to a few friends of mine.
Yeah. We
So,
can help you. We can help you do that.
okay.
It will be a link on our website under the YouTube recordings of our educational programs. And it's as simple as copying the link and attaching it to an email and sending it to your friends.
Oh, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Carmen had a question too.
And then John.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, how is the spiritual part of the treatment work? I mean, there is a spiritual component, right?
There's a spiritual and bereavement counselor, and really they just meet the need of the person where they are. So really there's no religion to it. It's basically holding space for whatever that person feels is their soul is connected to. So someone wouldn't come with, a certain expectation of the hospice patient, or their family. They just listen and whatever comes up for them, maybe spiritual to them is getting outside every morning to, see the sunrise. I mean, so really.
Do they have their pastor or the priest or ministers come in? Do they ever come in?
They do, yeah, we have connections with all of the local like, synagogues and churches and, places of worship, so. If a person wants a person to come to their house or to come to the residence, we just connect with them and have them help them to do that. Yeah,
We've had the monks come chant.
that was beautiful.
Really beautiful.
You said John Kent's
Yeah,
next?
John,
Yes, thank you. If you're doing VSED, are you eligible? Can you also have hospice care to give you extra support?
Yes, and I would certainly highly encourage that. V said voluntary stopping of eating and drinking really should not be done in isolation. It's you need a lot of support. And so we have many people who come to us and say, we're thinking about it. And it's like, we start the conversations and we're there for them all along the way.
But in giving them hospice care while they do,
Correct,
Absolutely, yeah.
correct.
just contact your office.
Mhm.
Yes.
Carl. Carl or Carol? But you're on mute. Yeah,
Carol,
okay.
it was just spelled a little oddly.
Hi, Carol Rose.
Hey, Carol Rose.
Sandy brought up all of his years of making food at Fisher. Would one of you address sort of the special way that food is made and kind of catering to people's preferences and 3 a.m. snacks? I think that's really, really special.
Sure.
Thank you.
You want to say something about it?
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, what we say is, we will offer breakfast, lunch, and dinner and snacks throughout the day, and you can say yes or you can say no. We don't push the food at all. There are days when people feel like having a snack and days when they don't. And sometimes they wake up at 2 a.m. and want blueberry pancakes, and that's what we make. So it's just very individualized. People have soft diets. They have preferences. They have favorite foods, and so sometimes our volunteers will go and get that favorite food or make it for them. So it's a great service that our volunteers offer with all of that food love.
Because it's not just we make one thing and everyone eats the same thing. It's like some people want maple walnut ice cream at 2 a.m. and some people want, watermelons at, 10 at night. And so, when people first come in, we that's part of like the intake, even with patients at home, is what are the kind of things that you like to eat, because we want to make sure that they have those things in their home, or we have them in this home, so that they can have their needs met. And that, food is comfort, right? Like, it's something that people also kind of hold on to as one of the pleasures that they can have in this world. So we try to make sure it's as much pleasure as possible.
Go ahead, Martha. Martha and then Ann.
I was wondering, in terms of the resident, I was wondering, what is the least amount of time that a person has been there before they died?
1 minute.
Really?
Yeah.
1 minute?
1 minute.
Wow.
The ambulance pulled in, got them into the room, set them down onto the bed, and they passed.
Wow.
So that from what I understand of your services, that's probably not the ideal in terms of caretaking. You'd want at least, in terms of you're giving to a patient
Right.
a week or so.
We didn't get to know them. Yep.
We didn't get to know them at all. Yeah. But you know what was good is that their 2 children ended up getting our bereavement services for 13 months. So at least we got to support the family, even though the person had already passed.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
And I just want to tag along to that, just to let everybody know that any of the bereavement programs that we have running are open to other people in the community, even if they haven't been on our service, even if they haven't had a loved one on our service.
Oh, nice. Nice. I
Uh,
just wanted to mention, because when I visited, I was told that if I came and needed to come and stay at the house, that I could bring my dog.
Mhm.
That's amazing. I'm hoping she's going to predecease me because she would really miss me. But that's so fabulous that I could bring my dog to Fisher House. You guys are great.
Oh, thank you.
We have lots of pet visitations, mostly dogs, occasionally a cat, sometimes a bird.
Yeah.
Marietta.
Hi, Marietta.
I just wanted to re-emphasize something that has been said already, and that has to do with making up your mind or helping your loved one make up his or her mind early in the process, so that people get in to hospice care before a minute before they die. One of the hardest things, I think, for the staff and for the whole program is to be geared up to provide all this wonderful service and then not have the person there to provide it. I mean, to set up and be ready and have all the medications waiting and have all the rest of it going. And they've waited too long, essentially. They haven't been able to make up their minds. Encourage each other to confront this question and talk about it and talk about it with your friends early.
Have the
before,
conversation, yep.
before
really
it's
good point.
possible to be really helpful.
Mhm.
That was it.
100%.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
So I wanted to get to the opposite side of the 1 minute question, which would be folks that end up living a lot longer than maybe they thought they were when they connected to you all, or maybe longer than you thought they would. How does that work? And how challenging is that when you have to take people off because Medicare is telling you you won't get paid? I assume there's some reality there of where you got to cut people off and then maybe reconnect. Can you talk about that?
Sure, and it is challenging because like let's say in the home, they've gotten used to having that level of support. And what we do is if we have to discharge them from hospice, we keep in touch with them. We check in every now and then. And when it seems like they're appropriate, we sign them back on again. One perk for being here at the house is that if you graduate from hospice, but you're still at risk for qualifying for hospice, you can stay on our bridge program. So you can just stay here and we keep an eye on you, and then we sign you back on when it looks like you've declined a little bit more.
Meaning people can be living there and they're not actually on hospice. Is that
Correct.
what you? Oh, okay. So they're like renting the room for $500 a night.
And getting all that, basically it's a seamless care.
Yeah.
They don't experience it being any different.
Before we started that program, we would have to have people leave the house, and knowing that as soon as they left and stopped getting the care, all the care and support that they had here, that they would decline again. And so we thought, well, that doesn't make any sense as far as people, having to move out of the house and then move back in a few weeks when they decline. So we started the program where, okay, if the trajectory of your illness hasn't shown decline in a while, we can sign off of the hospice benefit, but still have the person stay here, because we know that their disease process they're going to start declining at some point. Yeah, exactly.
And it kind of harkens back to what I was talking about earlier, which is that when the symptoms are managed well, people feel a little better, and they do things like start eating again and deciding that they want to do a little PT so that they can walk around a little more stably, or there's like the goals change when symptoms are managed better. Certainly not certainly is unusual to have somebody. We literally had somebody come in on a stretcher. She hadn't been eating. She had unresolved nausea for a long time, was losing a lot of weight. We got her symptoms under control. She started eating some more, and she literally walked out the door and lived at home for almost a year before coming back onto hospice with us.
Great story.
Okay, so I'm checking the time and it's almost time to end the program. So if there are a couple more, maybe one or two more questions, and then then we can leave. Very grateful for the program we've had. Carmen, is your hand still up or I can't tell?
I think that's from before, but Laura has a
Before,
question.
Okay.
When you,
Go ahead, Laura.
go ahead. If you're cooking at the Fisher home, how many hours do you customarily spend there cooking?
For volunteer shifts, I think the volunteer shifts are like 2 hours, something like that.
Yeah, 2
Maybe our
hours.
volunteers can remind us.
Yeah, 2 hours.
2 hours, yep. And when I was volunteering, I would cook for about an hour and then spend an hour visiting rooms. And I just want to put a plug in for that. Encourage people to volunteer. Look into the Fisher home as a volunteer. It's an incredibly rewarding experience. Carly will tell you. Carol Rose will tell you. It's just wonderful. So nice option.
And who pays for the cooking ingredients? Do we bring our own? Is there a fund at the Fisher home for that? Because
We
that's kind of
usually
a
cover the food costs. There are a couple of volunteers that choose to bring their own, but it's not an expectation.
Okay.
And also we have some of our volunteers might cook for folks at home as well. Or they make a dish and they deliver it to the family house.
nice.
Carmen, did you have one last question?
I do. If a person chooses not to eat or drink anything, you said there was some support from hospice. What would the support look like?
We would just manage any symptom that came up. Sometimes people are having a lot of discomfort because they have their mouth gets very dry. So we make sure that even if the person is not able to do it themselves, that we're, swabbing with moist sponges, and we make sure that if they're having any pain or anxiety from the process, that we give them the proper medication to treat that. And we just make sure that we're supporting them through that process.
Must be hard for you to process, to experience that with people.
I can't speak for everybody, but for me, being able to fulfill somebody's goals and keeping them as comfortable as possible is really what hospice is all about, whatever they're choosing and however they're proceeding. With voluntary stopping of eating and drinking, the part that's hard, actually it's the part that's hard with any of it, is when the family members are in distress. And we work really hard to make sure that everybody's needs, or if there's any social issues going on, personal issues, we work really hard to make sure that everybody is kind of on board with the goals.
Thank you.
Well, okay, I'd like to end the program here and thank Maria and Kemper for coming. That was, as usual, a wonderful presentation. We are going to invite you back again, just to let you know.
Fantastic.
And I'd like to invite all of you to come for a visit, maybe not all at once, but if you want to come for a tour, please give me a call and we'll set up a tour and a chat and answer any further questions you have, or you just give us a call on the phone and we're happy to talk to you.
And as you leave the program, if you just wait 1 or 2 seconds, there'll be a little quick survey that will give us feedback about the program. Appreciate if you would fill that out when you leave. And thank everyone for coming. And this program will be available on YouTube as soon as Kay gets it up and running. Okay, well,
Thank
thanks
you
everyone.
so much for all the
Thanks so much.
questions. This was really great.
Yeah, great questions.
It was great questions, yeah. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Yep, you too.